Welcome to the most impossible job in the world, Mr. Hammarskjöld. When Dag Hammarskjöld took office as UN Secretary-General in 1953, he inherited an organisation in crisis. At a time when the struggle between the big powers had made an imprint on the climate of world politics, people were asking, what's the point of the United Nations? But Dag Hammarskjöld saw the UN's potential. He made the Secretariat independent of the member states, realising that the strength of the UN lay in its neutrality and could not be measured in money or arms. This made him one of the most respected and admired international leaders of the 20th century. He took great risks in his work. For him, nothing was impossible.
It has been said that I'm interested in mountaineering. This is true. The qualities it demands are precisely the qualities I feel we all need today. Perseverance and courage, a firm grip on reality, careful planning, a clear awareness of the dangers. The safest mountaineer is the one who never doubts his ability to overcome each and every difficulty.
Dag Hammarskjöld's inventive attitude towards the UN Charter enabled him to create peacekeeping operations, which were a completely new means of helping countries solve their differences. These days, such missions are one of the UN's most important tools for conflict management.
Translating, transposing, expressing things in different languages. This is what we do all the time.
To succeed means to realise the possible, Dag Hammarskjöld declared before embarking on his journey to Beijing in December 1954. 15 US airmen serving under the UN flag had been shot down and imprisoned in China. The situation was seen as impossible. The US had renounced its responsibility, and the People's Republic of China was not represented in the UN. However, Hammarskjöld was not daunted. A few months later, all the prisoners were released. Hammarskjöld and the UN had achieved their major breakthrough.
In modern international politics, we have to approach our task in the spirit that animates the modern artist.
Dag Hammarskjöld felt as strongly about art and literature as he did about politics. He believed that these areas required the same kind of understanding. During his time at the UN, he was constantly at work on different literary and art projects. He was a top achiever who also devoted his time away from political work to things that were as challenging, though in other areas. Dag Hammarskjöld often used artistic creativity as a metaphor for the task of diplomacy. It was Dag Hammarskjöld who coined the term preventive diplomacy. Much of this diplomacy is a matter of being able to foresee where the risk for political conflict exists and then mediate in these areas, discreetly yet adequately. In order to acquaint himself with the situation in conflict-prone places, Dag Hammarskjöld took fact-finding trips by his own initiative, small voyages of discovery during which he could form an impression of the circumstances, free from external political and media pressure, so as to enable the UN to act in time.
Old men ought to be explorers. Some have to be, because the frontiers of the familiar are close to them. But few succeed in opening up new lands.
In response to a request from the Congo, the Security Council authorised Dag Hammarskjöld to provide military and technical assistance to the country. As many as 20,000 men were sent to the Congo in the space of just 1 week, in a peacekeeping force intended to restore calm after the Declaration of Independence in 1960. But Dag Hammarskjöld's independent action was criticised by the big powers. The criticism went so far that Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev demanded his resignation. Dag Hammarskjöld responded to the criticism in his most famous speech.
It is not the Soviet Union, or indeed any other big powers, who need the United Nations for their protection. It is all the others. In this sense, the organization is first of all their organization. and I deeply believe in the wisdom with which they will be able to use it and guide it. I shall remain in my post during the term of office as a servant of the organization in the interest I shall remain in my post during the term of office as a servant of the organization in the interest of all those other nations as long as they wish me to do so.
And he stayed on. To great applause, he rejected the threat. Dag Hammarskjöld felt that solidarity and support for the small states against the big powers was one of the most important tasks of the United Nations. This still remains true today.
Dear Bo, as usual I'm behind with my correspondence. Thank you for your long stimulating letter. Strange how a little corner of Österlen feels more and more like home. With Greta and you, it's good watchmen and life givers.
Dag Hammarskjöld died in an air crash in Andola on the 18th of September 1961.